Right now, our food chain is tied to water wastage, erosion, scandal, and the long-distance transportation of food.
A lot of people say, you know, I hate the idea of farming in buildings because it's not natural. I love them when they say that. I just love to hear that. Why? Because farming is not natural. It needs a lot of support, lots of water, lots of fertilizer, herbicides, pesticides. On the plus side, of course, it makes our food possible, so.
It is estimated that by the year 2040, the world population will reach 9 billion, the majority city dwellers. How will they have access to fresh food and in a sustainable way?
Our vision is to build farms in cities all over the world so people have access to great tasting, fresh, safe food.
One way is by bringing large-scale agriculture back into the city.
The demand for local food is 20 times higher than the supply for local food today. The more people that are in this industry, the better, for sure.
This is Backlight. Welcome to the world of vertical farming.
When I was born, which was in 1940, there were 2.6 billion people alive. And today, there are 7.4 billion people alive. And this is within my lifetime.
In the year 2000, Professor Dixon Despommier of Columbia University, New York, asked his students what they would like the world to look like in 2040, when there will be over 9 billion mouths to feed.
We'd like to work on rooftop gardening. And we want to see how many people we can feed inside New York City. I said, New York City, that's a big place. You know, it's 8 million plus people. I said, why don't you limit your study to Manhattan? It's about 2 million people. They presented their report to me and they said, you know, we can only feed 2% of Manhattan this way. We're doomed. There's no hope. No, you did a great job. You went in not knowing what the answer was. You did the science, and you found out that that approach will only feed 2% of the population. But I said, what if you took your good idea and made it a better idea by moving a rooftop garden in the building itself? That's all I said. And there are lots of apartment houses that are unoccupied in New York City, so everybody knew that that was a possibility. And of course, they looked at me and said, can you actually do that? I said, of course you can. And then in my own mind, I saw my nose grow longer and longer and longer. Sort of the Pinocchio effect of, you know, you have to give these students some hope. And every time we drove down the highway, we'd look at a building and say, you know, that would make an ideal growing system, right? I said, these vertical farms, and all of a sudden it just sort of just came out of my mouth. I just had time. And from that point on, we were hooked on the term vertical farm because it seemed to fit the kind of thing that I had in mind. Today, we're going to face a big crisis. And that is the population still increasing. The amount of land for farming is decreasing. Even the land that is currently farmed has now been degraded below optimum levels. So we have all these convergent problems coming and facing us. And now the idea about vertical farming seems to make better sense because people can understand, okay, we can't farm the way we're farming, but we can still farm. And if we can still farm, we can still eat. And if we can still eat, and we can save water at the same time, maybe we can survive into the next millennium.
The optimism of Despommier and his students and improved technologies have inspired countless pioneers to think about how to radically innovate food production. All over New York, urban farming is on the rise in various shapes and forms. One of these urban farms is Square Roots in Brooklyn, founded by Tobias Peggs and Elon Musk's younger brother, Kimball. After making money with internet companies, they now invest in a platform where a new generation of urban farmers is learning how to grow produce locally in their own shipping container.
So this is the Square Roots farm, right? right? I call this extreme urban farming, right? Over here we have a housing projects. This is where Jay-Z, the rapper, actually grew up and, you know, spent his formative years. This is kind of as urban farming is ever going to get. Inside each of these shipping containers is the equivalent of a 2-acre outdoor field, right? So if you imagine a 2-dimensional field, a farm, and then you turn that on its end and you hang that field off the ceiling and rack it 256 times, right? That's what's going on inside these farms. So now you're farming in 3 dimensions instead of 2 dimensions. So you can get a lot more food out of a way smaller space.
All the crops that we have all taste phenomenal, and I believe it has to do with the way we grow, because we have that full control over the systems. So I can make it as cold as I want or as hot as it wants, and that makes the effect of making it sweeter, bitter, whatever the customer could potentially want is how we can make it.
I started my career 20 years ago in the internet, and that was a big opportunity. But now I see this opportunity in local, real food, and it is 10 times bigger than internet was, right? This is a huge entrepreneurial opportunity to try and figure out how to grow a lot of food in the city and get it to the people that are in the same neighborhoods as the farms that you're building. So we really set up Square Roots as a platform to empower a whole new generation of entrepreneurs who understand urban farming, understand community, understand local food systems, and we can work together with them to tackle this internet-sized opportunity.
The way that I see it is really like activism through entrepreneurship, because we're actually doing things that we want to do and we love to do, and we're making money doing it.
So many people, especially in the US, are really at the mercy of what we call the industrial food system. This is a system that ships in high-calorie, low-nutrient food from thousands of miles away, and it leaves people completely disconnected from their food, the people who grow their food, and the results in this country are awful. Obesity, diabetes, not to mention the impact to the planet. The consumer is seeing how awful the industrial food system is, and they now want local, real food. Organic food in this country has gone from nothing to be a $40 billion industry in the last decade. Local food within that is the fastest growing sector, right? There's no doubt about it. People want local, real food. So if you said to me, you know, the best tasting basil I ever had was when I was on vacation in the south of Italy in June of 2006, right? I could literally go back through historical environmental records and find light, temperature, humidity, CO2 level from the south of Italy in June of 2006 and go recreate that environment in my box in Brooklyn in February and grow that same tasting basil for you, right? This is very powerful, because if you have these modular farms all over the country, now instead of shipping food like the industrial system does, you ship data, right? Ship the environmental data and grow all of the food locally. It's a very powerful concept. And we can see a pathway where, like the internet, went from very difficult to completely doable in 10 years. The same thing is now happening with urban farming. It's pretty difficult today, there's no doubt about it. But the winds are with us, and this is inevitable, right? We will grow a ton of food in the middle of the city with very favorable economics very, very soon.
Take fins off.
See, when I talked about urban farming being like the internet 20 years ago, this is a good illustration of that, right? The user experience interface for this computer is, you know, like from the 1960s, you know what I mean? There's like everything here can just be upgraded and taken into the future for sure.
A lot of people say, You know, I hate the idea of farming in buildings because it's not natural. I love them when they say that. I just love to hear that. Why? Because farming is not natural. We are the only conscious species on the planet that purposefully destroys an ecosystem in favor of food production. If you don't look at farming that way, then you're not looking at farming the way it should be looked at. So looking at the world as an ecosystem, an enormous interlaced set of ecosystems, I should say, placing farming in the middle of that is the antithesis of ecology. It's not sustainable. It's harvested. It needs a lot of support, lots of water, lots of fertilizer, herbicides, pesticides. However, on the plus side, of course, it makes our food possible. So we can't knock it all together, even though it's only 10,000 years old in terms of the technology. Basically, we haven't altered that technology since it began. We just sort of improved on the machinery and the harvesting and that sort of thing. But the same crops are being grown, they're being selected for, that sort of thing. So the industries respond to the consumer's demands, always. And right now, in the world and in cities all over the world, the demand is for fresh produce locally grown. Fresh produce locally grown. That's not always possible. Indoor growing, now it's always possible. I don't think that you're going to find Wall Street with every other building as a vertical farm. That's ridiculous. And some people have used that as a commentary on the industry, that how can you possibly think about insinuating farming inside of a city where the property values are so high? You know, if you're a developer, you could never make enough money with a vertical farm in New York City. Actually, you could, but you have to put it on the periphery of New York City, where the property values go way down, because nobody wants to live out there. They all want to live in the middle where all the action is, right? So you put the vertical farms in the periphery. Looks like a regular farm, except that in this case, they're indoors. And now you've got fresh produce pouring into the city every day, maybe 10 minutes worth of transit time from the farm to the table. We're gonna go to Whole Foods. Here's the market. Hopefully the hydroponic farm is still on the top. And I am absolutely impressed with the system and how remarkable and how accepted this concept is in terms of consumers. So this is the closest that grown food gets to the consumed food. This is meters away. This is not a mile away. This is not a block away. These are within meters of people actually shopping for this food. People know about this, and they come here for the freshest fruits and vegetables that you can possibly imagine. So, this produce was grown upstairs from where it was sold, so it's minutes old. If you were to taste this right now, you wouldn't recognize it, even if you had the same vegetable grown outdoors, grown minutes away from your table. There's nothing like this. Nothing. So there's tons of space, and there's lots of places to put these vertical farm systems in places where you will do no harm to the environment, you will do no harm to the communities, you might even resurrect a few of them, and you'll provide food for lots of people. I think that's the goal of all of this, is to empower people to live healthier lives, and it's up to us to find those places and to encourage the development of them.
On the other side of New York, in Newark, Aero Farms converted several abandoned buildings with the aim of growing over 90,000 kilos of leafy vegetables a year. According to them, this makes them the largest vertical urban farm in the world.
This is the 8th farm at Aero Farms that we've built. We're in actually a former paintball facility. Our 7th farm was in a converted nightclub. We joke around that the plants are on the dance floor. We just finished our 9th facility that's just a few blocks away, that's in a converted steel factory. And here we're illustrating our ability to take an existing building, often dilapidated, underused infrastructure, repurpose it to a state-of-the-art farm. From a performance standpoint, we have about 130 times the output versus a field farmer, meaning what we could do in 1 acre, it would take 130 acres out in the field. In fact, from seed to harvest, which for us is 16 days versus 30 days in the field, by the way, that's 22 crop turns versus 3, but for that period of growth, we take approximately 120,000 data points, allowing us to become better farmers. Plants don't need sun, they need spectrum. They don't need soil, they need nutrients, micronutrients. We also use 0 pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, not organic pesticides, but 0 pesticides. Our growth media, for example, is made out of 100% recycled plastics and it's 100% reusable. The system of filtration that we use allows for this 95% less water in our growing towers. We're changing the world in lots of ways. We're happy to lead this industry. It's not a fad, it's a trend. We're the leaders of this trend.
In the U.S., we're at this tipping point. More than ever before, consumers know that our food system is more challenged than ever. Headline news, we have a drought, right? Even here in New Jersey, we're in the middle of a drought. Food safety, there's a recall every single week. So these are issues where our food systems are more challenged than ever before, and we know we need a new paradigm. So we see Argentina, we see Guatemala, we see Mexico, we see Salinas, California, we see the Dutch peppers. Think about how far that's had to travel. And think about after you harvest something, it's losing its nutrition value, it's also losing its flavor. So here we are in Newark, New Jersey. How do we have a better solution? And without all those, food transportation miles, you think about the cost, the embedded energy that goes into that, we have to have a better system, a better approach. We think by able to grow locally, we can do that.
There are more and more companies that are trying to be local farmers. And not surprisingly, there's this romanticized notion of local food production. It's elegant, it draws one in. Unfortunately, there's an underappreciation of the complexity of what it means to succeed. They don't fully understand what their economics are, as well as all the risks are. The biggest of which is food safety. 11% of all food contamination comes from leafy greens, E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, etc., etc. This is not the place to cut corners. It's thinking of identification and extraction, and always fighting the challenges of biology. Just like you and I could catch a cold, plants could catch a cold. How do we identify it and minimize risk? So our vision at AeroFarms is to build farms in cities all over the world so people have access to great tasting, fresh, safe food.
So food safety is an enormous issue throughout the world. Even though you can get enough food, you're not quite sure whether you should eat it. The closer your food supply is to where you live, the more available it is, and the less damage it incurs on the way to your plate. If you ask the people what they would prefer, they say, we would much prefer to see the food coming from within the country. We can trust it. Trust is a big issue in this one. Food sovereignty, food safety, food security, and food sustainability. Those 4 S's, those all matter. And vertical farming solves all of them. So you've got 7.3 billion people, and they require the size of South America in land mass to grow their food. That's their agricultural footprint. If you add another 3 billion people to that, you need the size of Brazil in addition. And the size of Brazil land mass doesn't exist. We don't have that much more land to farm. So when those next 3 billion people arrive over the next 30 to 40 years, where will their food come from? I had the privilege of being invited to a meeting between the Netherlands, the government, and China. It was called Innovating Metropolitan Agriculture. And I saw the way the Chinese understood vertical farming, and their just eyes got big. And they said, this is what we want to hear. This is what we're going to do. And they're doing it. So, but Holland, or the Netherlands, started this ball rolling in China by saying, we'll supply the expertise. You may not know how to do this, but we have about 100 years worth of experience at growing plants indoors.
We look at Holland as the mecca for agriculture technology. You know, we're very proud of our technology and what we're doing, but quite frankly, a lot of it is inspired and maybe directly uses technology that's coming from the greenhouse industry and other Dutch companies.
The Netherlands is the world's largest exporter of food products after the USA. The bulk of tomatoes, bell peppers and cucumbers are grown in the horizontal greenhouses of the Westland, wedged between Rotterdam and The Hague. In the greenhouses of the Duivestein company alone, 100 million kilos of tomatoes are grown sustainably each year, mainly for export. Jan Willem van der Schans is a researcher at Wageningen University and is studying the socio-economic effects of changes in farming worldwide.
Nederland, zou je kunnen zeggen, is een soort proeftuin. Want heel veel van de problemen die in wereldsteden aan de orde zijn, die zijn hier eigenlijk ook aan de orde. Dus de hele strijd om het land hebben we in Nederland al eeuwen ervaring mee. De strijd om het water hebben we al eeuwen ervaring mee. Voedselproductie doen we al heel lang, vrij intensief in een kleinschalig landschap. Dus stedelijke gebieden over de hele wereld die kunnen daarvan leren.
Every day in Bleiswijk, the Netherlands, foreigners come to take a look at the experimental greenhouses, jointly owned by the researchers of Wageningen University, growers and technology companies.
In Holland, about 20% of our tomatoes is grown under light, and it's mostly to fill the gap in winter. So you see indeed different bars. They're not on yet because, of course, with the sunlight, there's no point in extra light.
Is that from the Philips?
This particular one is indeed with Philips, yeah. Do you use artificial lights?
No, we don't. But I think about that because in China, there's some area in winter, there's some smog.
Well, pepper production. You're a tomato grower, so you're not interested. So let's move on. I think we lost your director.
Yeah.
He's gone. Oh, sir, it's we're here. Yeah. You were taking too many photos.
Oh.
No problem.
Nou, Nederland heeft gewoon een hele sterke exportpositie in de tuinbouw, in de voedselproductie. Daar hebben we gewoon heel veel in geïnvesteerd en dat hebben we tientallen jaren heel goed gedaan. Maar de wereld is aan het veranderen. De Duitsers die wezen onze komkommers af op basis van geruchten dat er EHEC in zat. Het zat er niet in. De Russen die hebben een probleem met Greenpeace, sluiten de grenzen. Trump die zegt eigen Amerikanen eerst. De exportpositie van de Nederlandse landbouw begint steeds risicovoller te worden. Dus het gaat een kant op dat we misschien gewoon op een andere manier naar onze landbouw moeten gaan kijken. Dus we komen van een tijd dat we zeggen van wij gaan de wereldbevolking voeden, wij gaan de wereldsteden voeden. En we gaan nu toe naar een tijd dat we zeggen wereldsteden, we gaan jullie leren jezelf te voeden. We zien steeds meer dat eigenlijk het systeem onder druk staat. En dat er politieke conflicten komen, noem maar op. Dus dat betekent dat die globale handel kwetsbaar wordt. Veel hoger risico met zich meebrengt. En je ziet ook investeerders die eigenlijk zeggen van joh, zo'n kassencomplex vlakbij Londen vinden we veel prettiger om in te investeren dan dat we die spullen uit het Westland halen. En zo geldt het voor Moskou precies hetzelfde. En Chinese burgemeesters die denken ook van ja, ik heb geen zin in een volksopstand. Weet je wat, ik ga proberen die voedselvoorziening rond mijn stad zelf te organiseren.
In ons geval gaat ongeveer 50% gaat richting de UK, 30% blijft in Nederland, 10% naar de Scandinavische landen en nog wat naar Duitsland en wat naar Frankrijk.
Oké, en zie je dat veranderen in de nabije toekomst?
Nou, Engeland met de Brexit is natuurlijk ook afwachten. Maar al kijk je natuurlijk naar tomaten in het geheel in Nederland, gaat ik verreweg het meeste naar Duitsland. Vaak kijk je vooral naar de kop van het gewas, dus bovenin, daar zit het groeipunt. Dus die blijven continu doorgroeien. Ja. Die laten we dan vervolgens een stukje zakken. En als je verder naar beneden kijkt, zie je de vruchten eigenlijk groter worden. En dat eigenlijk de rijpe vruchten op de juiste hoogte hangen ook om te kunnen oogsten. Als je bijvoorbeeld een tomatentros hebt, is het voor ons heel belangrijk hoe groot zo'n tomaat is. Onze klant heeft gewoon specificaties waarbij ze zeggen, wij willen eigenlijk tussen zoveel gram en zoveel gram moet een tomaat zijn. Deze tomaat kan je bijvoorbeeld best 20 gram zwaarder of lichter maken. En dat is weer helemaal gebaseerd op je klimaat en de balans. En die moet je dan ook op een of andere manier goed meetbaar kunnen maken. Wil je dat dan met algoritmes kunnen berekenen, analyseren. We zijn natuurlijk nog best ook afhankelijk van het buitenklimaat, zeker op het gebied van zon. En ik denk wel dat als je in een hele gecontroleerde omgeving gaat telen, waarbij je eigenlijk de buiteninvloed afsluit, dat algoritmes ook een stuk dichterbij komen. En zijn jullie daar ook mee bezig met vertikale teelt in gesloten groeikamers of op dit moment
voor tomaten?
Wij houden dat wel in de gaten. Ik denk dat momenteel dat vooral heel erg interessant is voor de kleinere producten, waarbij je ook meer laags kan gaan. Dus de kressen, de sla, et cetera. Daar zitten de meeste ontwikkelingen nu in.
De eerste keren dat we voorstellingen zagen van vertikale teelt, toen reageerden er veel mensen in Nederland enigszins sceptisch van nou gaat dat het nou worden. Horizontale teelt heeft ook zijn beperkingen. Je hebt heel veel ruimte nodig, dus je komt heel snel op gebieden buiten de stad uit. Dat betekent dat er zeg maar een verwijdering is, niet alleen geografisch, maar vaak ook mentaal, tussen degene die produceert en degene die consumeert. Het Westland ligt op zich redelijk dicht bij Den Haag, Delft en Rotterdam, maar toch is de tuinbouw een hele eigen wereld. En met die vertikale teelt kun je gewoon veel compacter telen. Dus kun je in stedelijke omgeving kun je gewoon die productieunits plaatsen. En dan kun je ook fysiek de afstand met de consument kleiner maken. Als je nou kijkt naar het Westland, dan is het eigenlijk nog steeds een infrastructuur van toen tuinbouw een plattelandsactiviteit was alleen voor de omliggende steden. Smalle weggetjes, kleine vaarten, dus je kan helemaal je voorstellen dat daar de groenteschepen het naar de veiling brachten en dat het dan naar de omliggende steden ging. Dat is helemaal uit zijn voegen gebarsten, want we zijn internationaal gaan produceren daar. Dus je ziet nu hele grote vrachtwagens rijden op hele smalle weggetjes, landweggetjes, waar ook kinderen naar school gaan, waar mensen ook gewoon leven en wonen. Dus toen kregen wij het idee in Wageningen, we gaan dit nou eens even heel goed aanpakken en we gaan grote industriële parken aanleggen, waar we gewoon dus de voedselproductie scheiden van de plaatsen waar de mensen wonen en waar de mensen werken en dan gaan we het optimaliseren. Nou, dan blijkt dat je dus het systeem trekt in het industriële. En dat blijkt, in ieder geval in Nederland, heel moeilijk te liggen. Dus wat heeft die stadslandbouw ons nou gebracht om het voedselsysteem te trekken naar de plek waar je woont en werkt?
On the roof of a former Philips factory in The Hague, Urban Farmers has built an urban farm, where they grow fresh vegetables and salad crops.
Veel mensen zeg maar, uit het Westland die zullen zeggen, waar beginnen ze aan? De grond is heel duur, het is heel ingewikkeld met een lift, omhoog en omlaag. En dan hebben we gewoon een paar honderd kropjes sla, terwijl wil je dat efficiënt produceren, dan moet je een paar hectare hebben.
Nou ja, wat bij Urban Farms hier vooral erg belangrijk is dat om vers groente en voedselproductie weer terug te brengen in de stad. Dit is een plek waar mensen ook naartoe kunnen komen en we willen mensen ook laten zien hoe het groeit. Een rondleiding te krijgen door de kas en uiteindelijk gewoon met een volledige maaltijd terug naar huis te gaan.
En denken jullie dat je zeg maar uiteindelijk je geld verdient met de sla of verdien je je geld misschien met het hele verhaal eromheen?
Ook het hele verhaal eromheen.
Als je kijkt naar het perspectief van de toekomst, dan moet je eigenlijk het Westland gaan herontwerpen en dan moet je er ofwel één groot industrieterrein van maken, ofwel je moet misschien gaan zeggen van hé, er zijn nieuwe inzichten. Die voedselproductie moeten we veel meer met de woon- en de leefomgeving van de stad integreren en dan ga je hem verticaal doen en dan ga je gewoon ertussen parken maken en interessante woonomgevingen. Het is misschien minder efficiënt, maar het biedt veel meer mogelijkheden om in te spelen op de vraag van de consument. consument. En dat is echt het grote probleem van de landbouw. Van, we weten heel goed hoe we bulk moeten produceren, maar we weten helemaal niet zo goed hoe we toegevoegde waarde moeten produceren. Ik zie die stadslandbouw, die vertical farming, ook echt als een soort bakermat van innovatie voor de landbouw in zijn geheel. Architecten gaan zich er opeens mee bemoeien. ICT-mensen gaan zich er opeens mee bemoeien. Hippe mensen met baardjes gaan zich er opeens mee bemoeien. Hebben misschien vanuit het klassieke perspectief van de tuinder of de boer gezien totaal geen verstand van hoe teel ik die tomaat nou. Maar ze brengen hun eigen ideeën mee. Dus die benaderen die stedelijke consument ook op een andere manier, met een heel ander verhaal. Veel meer gericht op beleving dan op, zeg maar, feitelijk het voeden van de stad.
In parts of the world where land is scarce or unsuitable because of the climate, architects, internet pioneers, investors and governments alike are beginning to realize that vertical farming has a future. Sustainable entrepreneur Hans Hassler, co-founder of Plantagon in Sweden, thinks 25 years ahead when it comes to making cities and agriculture more sustainable. Hassler develops technologies to realize vertical farming on an industrial scale in iconic high-rise buildings. In Dubai, he meets his influential business partner, Soud Ba Alawi. Together they will try to win over local investors and project developers.
Dubai would be a very, very good market for us to really do something very big. There's a culture here that is not so afraid as we might be at home for doing spectacular things. And of course, when you work with innovations like ours, you need to have some courage as well. Not only financial capacity, you need to have the will to take some risk for doing something good for the future.
We are in a desert, so we import everything here. You know, I mean, 95% of it. So to become sustainable in today's world, you have to be sustainable, you have to be self-independent and self-sufficient in terms of food production, energy efficiency and so on. And remember, we don't have water also. We're in a desert, okay, we don't have much rain, you know. So guess what, you know, vertical farming in a building would be perfect for us.
We're seeing a future where water and land is being an issue for all of us. So let's say that I can't eat. What will I do then? I won't sit around and wait for someone else solving the problem. That's a human right, as water. So you need not only companies and innovators and entrepreneurs, you need politicians, you need standardization, you need universities, everyone needs to work on this. Because we don't want to see people fighting against each other over food. And that really scares me.
In Dubai, a new sustainable neighborhood is being built. Here, food production is already incorporated in the design. Small, dome-shaped greenhouses where vegetables and herbs are already being grown are located in the center of the neighborhood.
So only electric buggies are allowed into this area. Kids are running around the streets. It's very active. This is the strip that runs down the middle that has these biodomes, which are the greenhouses, which grow food for the city. So we have 11 of these biodomes that run down the length of what we call the farm, or the green spine of the sustainable city. It's here where we grow much of the produce for the residents. In each dome we can grow around 10,000 of these pots.
And how do you irrigate them from filling this?
They're hand irrigated. So
okay. So if you center the food production, it's like a hub for a smart way of recycling everything in the city. It's called symbiotic cities or symbiotic systems, or even industrial ecology. So it's a smart way of putting food in the center. And then from the social angle, I think it's also good. I like to see where my food comes from. To me, that's a social thing that I would like to know. Okay, my food is being made in the dome over there. I understand how it's made. Maybe I can even go in there and have a look. And then, of course, environmentally, the transportation is being cut away. So it makes sense in many ways, I think. But if I stay only on what we see in here now, first thing that we would change is take the soil away. Because let's say that we are inside a huge city right now. Where would this soil come from? You would have to transport the soil to get it here. And when someone buys this pot, this person takes this home, throws away the soil, and then you need to put new soil here. It doesn't mean that this is wrong, but it doesn't give very much answers on the technological side. If you want to have high yield food production in a city, resource efficient, then this is not the answer. The development of urban agriculture, vertical farming, underground farming, all these things that are happening now, to me it's only like logic. You have to move lots of food production into the cities. When it comes to food security, that's a political thing. Countries, especially city-states, realizing that they will be so dependent on other countries for their food production because they import almost everything. So I think, or to my experience, that's why the political agenda or the political discussion is rising really fast now in city-states like Dubai, Singapore, also Hong Kong. Obviously, Dubai has a culture when it comes to innovation and doing spectacular things. And we're not really doing the spectacular things that we really could do so far anywhere in the world. And my dream would be that that could very well happen here in Dubai, to really, really show the world how you can use this technology. A vertical farm is, to me, a high-rise, multifunctional building producing food in a vertical system. When you say system, I really mean a system, not a multi-layer system on each floor in a high-rise building. It's a good thing, but it's not an industrial scale food production line that you would build vertical.
To get investors on board, Hassler wants to design spectacular buildings with offices on one side and vertical farms on the other. High up in the glass buildings, the seedlings are placed on a conveyor belt. This belt then slowly drops down until the vegetables can be harvested and sold.
I could be pretty sure that we would get also governmental support from Sweden. I will immediately, if it's okay, talk to Business Sweden about this when I get home.
Sure. All right,
thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks.
Very much.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah,
and
very nice
hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Nice meeting you. Thank you very much.
Impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was an amazing meeting. It was very, very good. You also become more happy, I think. It's not only over agreeing to do things together. It's also when you meet people that you share values with, that you share people that knows what it takes to do these things. I know when you implement food into city planning, it catalyzes lots of other smart thinking, because when you produce food, you obviously need water, energy, and nutrients. So you try to find the nutrients in the city. And where would you find the nutrients in the city? Very often in the waste. So waste becomes something that you can use in the food production. And energy, you need to have a connection between smart energy use and the food production, and the same thing with water. So maybe the future city will be very much planned according to food production. When you ask me this question, to me, I guess I never thought about it because it's so obvious to me. City planners have a huge role, of course, to play in this, because city planners can start thinking, discussing, affect political decision makers that forces real estate developers to integrate food in their buildings. there will never be a building that only produces food, because that building relates to energy, water, and transportation, lots of other stuff around the building. So I think as soon as you start discussing food to be integrated in a city, lots of other good things comes along with it.
If architects, universities, investors and pioneers join forces, then vertical farming in cities can make a valuable contribution to the looming fresh food shortage. And there are more hopeful developments. In the heart of Newark, New Jersey, where fresh food is hard to come by and obesity is a huge problem, there is an extraordinary high school where students grow their own food for their daily lunch.
So this is our rooftop garden. It's what we consider one of our learning environments. If you look around, we're in the middle of Newark, New Jersey, so there's not a lot of farming out here, as you imagine. We often call this a food desert. So the idea of food access and things of that nature that are typically some of the challenges of inner cities, we kind of address here. So we're in the middle of, very early spring. It's actually not even spring yet. But if you came back in a few months, there would be lots of things. There'd be kale and cabbage and broccoli rabe, lots of tomatoes. The kids love tomatoes, cucumbers, melons, and so on.
So let's go ahead and start the harvest. So you guys can go and bring it down onto the table and then put your gloves on.
Pull it.
It's on yours.
The lighting and stuff, because different plants need different things.
Right.
Like different
And you can see our kids are looking at the future of food through alternative growing. When we first started, we were doing traditional growing, which we still do, and to the point where kids were pulling out radishes, and just because they were red, they thought, oh, this is a tomato, or this is a cherry. Like this connection of how food grows, and whether it was a root vegetable, or grew on a tree, or so on, is something that our kids were not connected to. And I don't think our kids were anything unusual. I think that we're so conditioned to being in a supermarket where everything's prepackaged and wrapped and processed that that connection has been lost.
When I say quiet, you say down, quiet, quiet. Fantastic. We'll let you know when soup and salad is open and available. I would like to thank you guys for doing a good job following our rules. Enjoy your lunch.
Boys and girls, on the menu today, you're eating turkey, sausage, and peppers. But someone just asked me what the other side dish is. This is called polenta.
Can someone tell me what polenta is made from? What grain is polenta? Corn. Like, this is a learning environment. This is as important as a classroom setting. They're learning how to collaborate, cooperate, communicate, all of those things within these round tables of the dining room. You know, one of the things we do is that we start kids really early because they start forming their habits, good, bad, or indifferent. And that we learn that if we start kids early and expose them to all the aspects of food, that they'll be basically stewards to go out into their lives and make changes.
When almost everyone has moved from the country to the city, and vertical farming has become a fixture in the city of the future, there could be yet another positive effect.
In those countries that convert their urban populations to an urban food supply, it relieves a tremendous pressure on the land. So what happens when those farms are abandoned? And I think that's the plus side to this, by the way. We need to recover some of the ecological functions that we used to have, which we lost when we cut down those trees to make room for those farms. We can now let them grow back. We can then suck up the CO2 into new trees that grow where the old trees used to be. So you look at the way we're disemboweling the earth to a finely tuned Swiss watch, and we've already got a lot of parts to this watch over here. We have to now start to put them back into the watch. The earth is not keeping very good time anymore. In fact, if you'll excuse this expression, the earth is suffering from a bipolar disorder. Both the North and South poles are suffering greatly as the result of this rapidity of climate change that we are causing by our activities. There isn't one solution to this problem. We have to take a multiple systems approach. And part of that includes putting urban agriculture to its maximum use. Rooftops, empty lots, greenhouses, and greenhouses stacked on each other, namely vertical farms. We don't want to have to abandon this planet because we've destroyed it. So let's really do it here and make a balanced world and then say, yeah, we'd like to replicate this someplace else. You can't go there unless you learn how to do it here first. We'd like to give it to the next generation. You come visit us on Mars. We'll have the same balance. That's my dream.
Ich hoffe, dass Ihnen das Video gefallen hat. Klicken Sie hier, um das empfohlene Video anzusehen. Bitte abonnieren Sie unseren Kanal, um Updates über VPRO DOK zu erhalten.